Imagine a country where sirens blare in the middle of the night, where once golden fields of pride are now scarred by bombs, and where millions of pairs of feet are rushing to leave their homes. Yet amid the chaos, something strange happens that makes you look back. Ukrainians are, in some ways, richer than they were before the war, and the war has made them richer. This is not a fabrication. These are the numbers from the IMF, and they tell us the story of today. Let's go back in time to 2021, when Ukraine was still enjoying rare days of peace. At that time, the country's economy was quite stable. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, each Ukrainian has an average of $4,878 in their pocket each year, at least on paper. If calculated in terms of real purchasing power, this figure would certainly be much higher, enough for them to dream of a bright future. Endless wheat fields, steel furnaces blazing day and night, all the beats of a country growing every day. But then, in 2022, Russia launched a special military campaign and Ukraine was engulfed in flames. Factories were devastated, the sea turned into rubble, millions of people packed up and left. And the International Monetary Fund, IMF, reported that Ukraine's economy went into a nosedive, losing 35% of its GDP in just 1 year. The average income of each citizen is only about $3,714, and purchasing power has also dropped significantly. But Ukraine does not stay in the dark. Since 2023, despite the war, the economy has begun to revive. The International Monetary Fund began to count. GDP per capita inched up, and each Ukrainian in 2024 had an average income of $5,005, surpassing the war level. The purchasing power was equivalent to more than $19,000, which is almost 1.5 times more than before. It sounds like a real-life fairy tale. The war is still raging. So why are Ukrainians richer? Why is there such a paradox? This can be explained as follows. From the US, Europe, and many other countries, hundreds of billions of dollars have been sent, not only to keep Ukraine afloat, but also to write a dramatic economic story amid the death row. So what forms of aid do they take? And what specifically does that money turn into for the Ukrainian economy? The first and simplest form is cash flowing straight into the Ukrainian budget. When the war broke out, taxes and domestic revenues almost disappeared, factories closed, ports were blocked, and people fled. The Ukrainian government is on the brink of having no money to pay civil servants, no money to feed the army, and no money to care for the wounded. Yet the big guys like the US and the EU have stepped in, opening their wallets without hesitation. The US, as the big brother, has pumped in more than $73 billion by 2024, tens of billions of which are direct cash. In 2022, for example, the U.S. Congress approved a $45 billion package, a large portion of which went directly to Kyiv to keep the state's machinery running. The money went into salaries for teachers amid the sirens, medicine for hospitals amid the rubble, and fuel for trucks racing through war zones. The EU is not sitting still. In 2023, they are launching a package of 18 billion euros, or about $19 billion, in direct financial aid. This money will be delivered in regular installments like monthly subsidies for Ukraine to spend on its most basic needs. It could translate into temporary bridges across rivers, repaired schools, and subsidies for those who have lost their homes. But not all aid is so free and unpaid. Some comes in the form of concessional loans with low interest rates, extended repayment periods, and sometimes hidden debt forgiveness. These are hot commodities such as weapons, tanks, and missiles, bought with money from donor countries. The United States continues to lead the way in military aid. But don't think all of this money goes to Ukraine. In fact, most of it is spent right here in the United States. The Pentagon will order American defense companies to produce Patriot missiles, artillery, or Abrams tanks and send them to Ukraine. And the aid does not come only in cash or guns, but also in the form of essential goods purchased with the money of donor countries. So the economy of Ukraine, or more precisely, the pocketbook of Ukraine, has gradually recovered thanks to the aid of other countries. But there is another peculiarity. Ukraine's per capita income has increased because its population has decreased. In 2021, that is, before the war, Ukraine had about 41 to 42 million people. This is down from the period after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when Ukraine had nearly 52 million people in 1991. Due to low birth rates, migration and loss of Crimea, as well as some of the do-bad. Still, 41 million people are a crowded picture in Kyiv. The capital is the busiest with over 3 million people. Odessa, the bustling port city with nearly 1 million people. Ukraine's general mobilization has banned men aged 18 to 60 from leaving the country, except in special cases. As a result, women and children have become the main subjects of the exodus from Ukraine. More than 90% of the refugees are women and children. And in total, more than 6 million people left, leaving behind a smaller Ukraine. From 41 million people, it has shrunk to about 35 to 37 million. The economic pie is divided among fewer people, and so naturally each person gets a little more money if per capita income is spent. This is one of the largest migrations in European history since World War II. Crowded trains, long lines of cars waiting at border gates. These are haunting images of war. So where do they go to make their home country's income increase? Sometimes just an illusion. Each Ukrainian who leaves has a different destination, but most find a place to stop in neighboring countries. Germany is the country that takes in 1.2 million Ukrainians, making them one of the largest refugee communities in Europe. Berlin, Munich, Hamburg are now home to hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. Poland has also taken in about 1 million refugees. The country was the first destination for many Ukrainians. The Poles opened their arms, turning train stations into shelters, providing food and jobs for the newcomers. The Czech Republic, although not very large in terms of area, has also received about 400,000 Ukrainians, an astonishing number compared to the population of about 11 million in the Czech Republic. Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia have also welcomed hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, creating a huge wave of migration that has spread across Europe. Back to the story of Ukraine's income. Is it high on paper, or is it just an illusion? To answer the question of whether Ukrainians are really as rich as the figures on paper published by the IMF and other international organizations suggest, we need to look deeper into the reality of their lives amid the flames of war. Figures such as per capita income increasing from over $4,800 in 2021, that is, before the war, to over $5,000 in 2024, or the equivalent increase in resources. That sounds nice, but it's only half the story. On paper, it's true that Ukrainians are getting richer and that Ukraine has made significant progress. But in reality, it's not. War is not just about bombs on the battlefield, but also about deep wounds in every home. More than 10% of homes have been destroyed or damaged, according to the World Bank. Millions of people have lost their homes, living in makeshift apartments or refugee centers in Kharkov and Dnipro, where Russia continues to exert pressure. They live in shelters, without electricity, without hot water, with only the sirens to keep them company at night. Before the war, Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of Europe, but now even its own people have difficulty getting enough to eat. Grain exports have recovered somewhat thanks to the Black Sea corridor, but domestic food prices have skyrocketed due to high and rising transport costs. Inflation is still making Ukrainian meals more frugal. Jobs are another sad story. More than 6.7 million people have left the country and hundreds of thousands have joined the army, sharply reducing the labor force. The unemployment rate in Ukraine is expected to be around 17 to 18% by 2025. Heavy industries in the east, such as steel and coal, have been virtually wiped out, while new jobs in the west, such as construction, IT, and logistics, have not been enough to compensate. Huge flows of aid from the west, including from the US, have helped Ukraine pay civil servants, provide social services, and repair infrastructure. But for ordinary people, that money rarely reaches them directly and is often sent straight to the battlefield. Thanks for your interest in following this paradoxical story.